Canin Universe, Joe Rabina here of American Cane Self Defense, and today we have a treat for you. One of the more colorful personalities in the in ACSD, none other than certified cane empowerment coach, Doc Stahl. What's up, Doc?
Hey, doing good, Joe. How are you?
Gotta say that. Doc, you're over in the West Coast, which has become a hot spot for ACSD caning. And straight off the bat, you have one of the more interesting, colorful backgrounds, you know, at a par with just as good as anyone's. And so I think this is a fantastic story, and that's why we're sharing it here today with the Canin Universe. But give me a little bit, and I know it would take, you know, it would take 2 books to fill this thing, at least. But a little bit of your background and where you're coming from before you came to caning.
Okay, well, I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was a little guy. My mother put me in a judo class when I was 6. I didn't have older brothers, you know, so that was really good to, you know, feel the contact and all of that. And I always loved sports. I really wanted to be a writer. You know, I wanted to be the next London because I was always that. And I won like a writing contest in 1st grade and whatever. And my mother would tell me stories. And so, yeah, so, you know, went to university at UC San Diego, but I did a lot of traveling. In fact, I traveled all over the world when I was 19 and 20 years old. I went above the polar circle. I was in the Soviet Union in the 70s at the height of the Cold War. I was in Istanbul, Turkey. I was in Jerusalem. Went to 23 countries. Yeah, and I fancied myself to be the next Jack London, and I did write quite a few stories and did some performances about that. Yeah, so that was a big part of my early upbringing, just kind of the lust for adventure, and so I did a lot of that. But I did manage to, you know, get my degree when I was 21, and then I worked in a lumber mill for 3 years, pulling these big, huge boards off the chain, as they say, the conveyor belts. I was in the best shape of my life, you know, eating triple bacon cheeseburgers and huge vanilla malts and drinking lots of beer every night. But still, you know, I didn't have much body fat because, you know, I was burning up about 4,000 calories a day to earn my master's. And that was kind of interesting because I actually took the whole dance curriculum when I was getting my master's. And so I did everything. I did folk dance, and I toured. I did modern dance. I just jazz and tap.
Hold that thought, because we're going to get, that's one of the things I want to talk about moving forward. But just give me, so you took your education to what level?
Well, eventually I got my doctorate at the University of Northern Colorado. So yeah, so
biomechanics is my understanding.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, my dissertation on physics of karate. I did one of the first high-speed studies of karate. You can, you know, look it up in dissertations abstract. But yeah, I had some. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, give me just a rundown so that our caners can get an idea, you know, of how diverse and the capacity in which you've served, because you've done a lot of things.
You mean you're just talking about life in general? I mean, some of the other things I've done?
You've been employed by who? By who? What have you done? I mean,
okay. Well, you know, I did teach university. I taught at 4 different junior colleges. I taught, you know, university in total 35 years. I taught at Northern Colorado. I taught at Humboldt State University. But you can probably tell from my voice and the rhythms of my voice, I've been in radio for 30 years. So I did a literature show for 20 years on public radio that was very popular. Did everything from Aristotle to Xenophon. And then I wrote and narrated 75 original pieces on sports history for ESPN Sports, which for me was actually one of the most gratifying things I'd ever done, because I got to work with a jazz musician who wrote original songs tailored to kind of my rhythms and my narrations, and I got to pick out the people that I wanted to write about. We've talked about it: Willie Mays, Roberto Clemente, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. It was just great. So you can still get those on the web.
How did you learn of the cane? How'd you get here?
Wow. How did I get to the cane? Okay, so I remember the first phone call very distinctly. Actually, I was in Ashland, Oregon. Look, let's see, we were watching Macbeth, I think. But, I really hadn't had a real workout routine in a long time. I just didn't like going to the gym and getting on the treadmill and lifting weights with no purpose. And I saw one of your videos. I think it was just serendipity. I don't know how I saw one of your videos, but what I liked about it was, I love the self-defense applications. I thought that was so cool because I did Tai Chi Chuan for 41 years as well. But I like the rhythm of it. I like the musicality of it. I like the dance step into it. I like to take those big swings, but at the same time move my feet, and I thought, wow, man, this is cool. I can get a cardiovascular workout at the same time, a self-defense workout, and at the same time learn kind of an original art, which is your kind of special amalgam of all the training that you've had. And it just seemed like the right thing at the right time. And I was convinced I wanted to teach it. As you know, I'm a thoroughbred teacher. I love it. I consider it performance art. And I thought, wow, man, I'd like to turn some people onto that. This is really cool. And so that's how it started. I had that initial call with you. And then I decided, I heard about your Immersion. And so I said, yeah, okay, I'll fly out to Miami.
Let me just right there. So, because I'm fairly confident you didn't first come into it thinking I'm going to teach this one day. I think. Did you, from the onset, did you come in already saying, oh, I'm going to go ahead and teach this? Or did you go through the experience and then say, hey, man, this is for me?
I think the Immersion validated it. When I saw it, I said, I think this is something I'd like to do kind of as a lifetime activity.
Okay. Hold on right there, because a lot of our caners watching. So Immersion, for those of you that are unfamiliar with, is ACSD holds 2 worldwide live cane training events. We have the winter, which always happens in February. And then we always have one in the fall, which is coming up now, September 21st through the 24th. And I mean, I don't want to overhype it. I'm not the only one that says it. If you read a lot of the reviews that tell you it's the #1, caner training event on the planet. Describe to me Immersion. What was your experience like?
Yeah, well, it was great. I mean, I had a great time. It extended 3.5 days. The one that I went to in February of 20, I believe it was.
You've only missed one since the first time you came.
Right. Yeah. So, but that was the first one. And I think what it did was it exposed me to so many different aspects of like the cane universe. So it exposed me to the rhythmic aspects and the different technique aspects and how it could tie into maybe empty hand applications. And so you got these little, you got many pieces of what is a whole mosaic that you've put together, and you see the links. And so for me, getting that kind of private instruction with other people that were really fun people from all over the United States, we developed a really nice camaraderie. It wasn't overdone. It was like 3 hours each day, and it really moved. So you were being challenged all the time, but at the same time, you had time to process it. So after that, after that 3 days, there was no question in my mind I wanted to continue on with that, and that I would love to teach it.
Yeah, and this is not uncommon. There are many who have come to caning first because they came into an immersion, and one example would be Master Keith Melton over at Cane Masters, and he also we met at an immersion. He attended one of our immersions, and he hasn't missed one since. I think that was like 6 years ago, something like that. And that's one example. And again, when you say in private, so we have always, regardless of, even before the pandemic, has nothing to do with the pandemic, we've always limited participation to a ratio of no more than 6 caners to 1 floor instructor, and then I'm there leading it all from the platform. But yeah, I remember that, and so immersions are one of the more common ways people attend that, and then that experience goes, yeah, boom, oh, this is something I want to do. What do you enjoy most about this style of caning?
Okay, I would say, first of all, just the actual movement aspect of it is challenging to me. I love all of the different cane techniques, but I like the rhythmic and musicality of it, and the
freezing up there. Doc, you're freezing up on me there on your end.
In many ways, it's like boxing in many ways. So I love that. That would be number one, just the joy of the movement. Number two is, I think it's an interesting intellectual experience. I like to look at your experience where you've had 30 years of putting this together and tactical experience, and somebody asks me a question and I have to figure it out just from the principles that you've taught. And because I don't have your experience.
Doc, I'm losing you there. Doc, I can't hear you there.
Okay,
I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
did you hear my answer? I wasn't sure if you heard my answer.
Go ahead, please say that again.
Okay. Yeah. So the second thing was the intellectual experience is interesting because I don't have your tactical experience, teaching experience, and putting this entire kind of art form together. Because of the principles you've taught us, if somebody asks me a question, I can go back to first principles, like, is it in the guard zone, for example? Am I balanced? Is this tactically practical? And so I found that I can actually answer a lot of questions just because of certain principles that you've elucidated, without having to even apply the tactical experience. Now, obviously, there's no substitute for that. But I think it's challenging because it's systemic. It's like learning the rules for, when you learn German, there's 3 different cases, in nominative, accusative, and dative, and that's hard. But once you figure that out, then you're able to form it. And so you kind of grammar structure for it, which is great.
This is good because the majority of these days are coming for self-defense. They come to the cane for self-defense, but then they stay, and it's what I always, for the pleasant surprises that come from caning. Right. So the third pleasant surprise is actually the people that you meet. I mean, so you've got that's really, you meet. The community is just, we're blessed with attracting some of the kindest, neatest human beings on the planet when it comes to, them serving and stretching out their hand to bring somebody up. No doubt about it. The community is tops. But I think that, if you there's nothing wrong with just coming to the cane for self-defense. ACSD caning a little bit different. It lends itself really well to solo training. I always say, if I toss a cane at you and you have to bring somebody else, or you need another piece of equipment to demonstrate what you can do with that cane, then your caning, in my opinion, is very limited. It's very limited. Thankfully, we have a curriculum that lends itself beautifully to solo training. Let me just go back for a second, because you're a musician and we have others who are in the groups that are musicians as well, that teach it. You're also into dance. And what are the parallels there? right? We call, we're in a caner circle. All right, pick up your, all right, let's dance. Boom, let's go. What parallels there? What do you see?
Oh, yeah. For me, there's lots of parallels. I mean, if to become really a competent musician, my greatest love was jazz. Is that you have to know technique and you have to know music theory, whether you learn it formally or not. But then once you're out there playing, it's like, well, you can go here, you can go there, you're improvising on a melody, and that's what you're doing with the cane. So, you have a whole host of movement options, and you can put them in different combinations and permutations, and it's like, okay, your legs are like, that's that boogie bass line, right? And you got to lay that down, keep the balance. And your right hand, now you're playing the melody. And so in caning, you're kind of doing the same thing. And so when down, it's, yes, you're doing the same thing you've taught us. We just haven't put them together yet because we haven't had our 10,000 hours, 30,000 hours, however many hours you've got to put it together. But it's very much like jazz, very much. And
ultimately, I always tell you, you're learning the alphabet, but ACSD caning ultimately is your caning. It's not Joe Robina's caning. It's not, Coach Aaron Balch's caning. It's not Doc Stull's caning. It's your caning. You're going to take that alphabet and you're going to start putting it your own words, and then you're going to write your own compositions eventually. You're a cane empowerment coach. What were you doing before you came to that? And what are the advantages for those who want to become instructors with this ACSD curriculum? You're a certified coach. You that process. How did that happen? And what are the advantages of that, would you say?
Well, I really, first of all, really believed in the system and what it could offer. I believed that it was a viable, effective form of self-defense that you can teach people within the first hour, maybe within even the first 10 minutes if you have the time. And so I found that to be very empowering, in an age where, there are lots of questions and people are concerned about their safety. So that part, passing that along, particularly to people who aren't, fighters, who aren't combative, who aren't aggressive, that's actually very empowering to pass that on. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, is just, people are surprised. They think a cane, well, it's a mobility device or whatever. They don't think of it as something that you can do more with. And so one of the things that has made me the most pleased is I've trained local people here where I am now, and they just love it. I mean, you've read the review. They love it. It was like, and they would tell me afterwards, they go, well, this is really the last thing I ever would have thought of myself doing. And then once they start practicing, they really look forward to it. And so I think that's really, the most gratifying thing. That's what's gratifying about teaching, period, is just opening people's eyes.
Doc, hold that thought. Let me get some juice here for this. Give me 1 second. Hold on. So you do something, I mean, you've gone beyond just, being a cane empowerment coach. You currently now are teaching also in the advanced, you're in Cane Tribe there, pitching in and helping out there as well for the headquarters. And you have a segment that we're going to be featuring on CSDU, and we've called it kinematics. Tell me about that. This is where you're taking your background in biomechanics. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, kinematics actually comes from Canin, which is Greek, which is to move. And actually, Aristotle might have been the first biomechanics person when he studied the movements of animals and whatever. But kinematics is actually the description of movement. Kinetics is actually the forces that produce it. But so kinematics is I like to take the movements and break them down. And for example, you emphasize keeping your elbows in when you're moving the cane. Well, if you keep your elbows out like this, not only are you outside the guard zone tactically, but there's more resistive torque out here on the shoulder joint. You don't have as much control of the cane. Also, you have to cover more distance, right? And get the bat around faster by choking up. That's how Pete Rose got more than 4,000 hits, right? Well, it's the same thing with the cane. And so what I like to do is talk about physics principles that can apply very readily to simple techniques that are passed on in ACSD. And it's really fun for me, you know, and so I think, you know, I use both sides of my brain. I love the musicality and the rhythmic and the improv part of it. I like that part, but I also like, as I said, the intellectual part, and because physics is the universal descriptor of how we move. That's how we describe it, where it's true for everybody, right? It's true for everybody. You know, gravity, it's negative 9.8 meters per second squared. And if these keys are not going to go up, if I pick them up, you know, say, okay, if these keys go up, you can all ask your professors for your money back. Okay, you've disproved, you know, one of the universal laws. Yeah.
And then lastly, so we have those who are looking at this, and you have this two ways. Those who are looking to get trained, and you know, we always talk about watching YouTube videos and being a YouTube caner and trying to learn this stuff from watching, you know, yesterday's technology, which is DVDs, and watching this on video versus, you know, getting trained with some, you know, our 6-week challenge and getting started with that. And then you have others who are instructors who they're looking for a curriculum to offer their audience, and especially during these times. I want to say during these times, we're in pandemic times right now. And boy, for so many, you know, they're locked down away from, you know, being out of business.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's one of the things that at ACSD, we really have that, and we refined that over a period of time. And during these times, all we saw was, you know, the growth has been like nothing else we've seen. Say a little bit about that. What would you say to anybody who's considering getting trained in or becoming an instructor?
Well, that's exactly right. If you had told me, you know, when we have met personally at the Immersion, whatever, but you know, you and I have been seeing each other for the last 2 years, a couple times a week. But it's basically just like I'm there at headquarters, and the people you get to know when you're teaching, it's hard to believe that you haven't met any of them personally. I've met you personally, but everyone else in Cane Tribe in the master's class where we are, I feel like I've known them and hung out with them, but I haven't. But that's really one of the nice things about it is, and you're able to reach out, of course, we mentioned this before, the people from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. And so you do kind of look forward as, you know, as a cane empowerment coach, you do look forward. You know, it's a rush. You at the end of each session, I'm sure you do too, you have a real high because, you know, you've interacted with people and you've made contact, even though it's through a screen. I wouldn't have thought that you could do that maybe 2 years ago. But I think, you know, particularly because of questions about the pandemic and it rears its head again, this is one way to make a connection with people. And it's wonderful.
It's amazing still. You know, you'll get questions sent to us and they say, hey, do you have any skill here on my area? I don't have anybody over here. Still, the mentality is that you have to meet live and that you have to have an instructor there. And something like the first step for us, which is, you know, you're learning your alphabet, not even if you come to the headquarters, I'll show you how to do that live because it's so effective doing it right in the comfort of home, right across the screen, the way we do it. And
right.
Had this experience with us, so they don't know just that. They're so surprised at how precise we can be right across the screen because it's a method that we've refined over a period of time. And so based on the feedback during times of adversity, we've managed to do something that's productive and something that's enjoyable to do.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, one of my first students was actually, you know, my closest friend and colleague, and we weren't able to see each other for a year in person. And yet, you know, he was able literally to train with me, and we looked forward to getting together and do it. And my God, he's terrific. You know, he's just, it's great. Yeah, this is something that you pioneered long before, you know, people were doing Zoom. You were already, you know, doing remote caning and sending critiques when people would send their videos in. So basically the rest of the world kind of caught up to, you know, what you had been doing for many, many, many years.
This is true. This is true. And that friend of yours, like many, you're looking at over 200 now, just in pandemic times, well over 200 who have been certified that way and crossed the finish line. Doc, we're out of time. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I look forward to seeing you in September as always, my friend. And I'll see you probably this week on there.
Yes, you will.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure, Joe.
By the way, those of you watching out there, what you want to do, text the letters CCC for Cane Clarity Call. That's how it begins, with a simple phone call. Text the letters CCC to 305-745-7839, and the staff will schedule you in less than 24 hours. We will jump on a call and give you all the information, answer all your questions regarding anything having to do with the cane culture, everything from training, canes themselves, so that you don't waste time, funds, and you don't get frustrated, right? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there today. I'm Joe Urbina for American Cane Self Defense. Keep caning. Stay safe.